Good morning, fifth grade. Today you are taking your online course by yourself. Congratulations. Make sure you are following your laptop procedure. You've already logged on. Your headphones should be plugged in. Make sure you're tracking the screen. Have your text open and ready, and pay attention so that you can complete the task. First, we have our quick write. What did people in the United States do to try to end slavery? And we just want you to use your background knowledge. What do you think they did to try to end slavery? Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to pick back up. Our focus question for today is, how did the abolitionists affect slavery in the United States? And we know that to abolish means to do away with something. So abolitionists wanted to do away with slavery. All right, our vocabulary words are clergymen. These are like ministers, priests, people who have like leadership positions in religion. The next one is resistance. That's when you oppose something, or it's like you are stubborn and you resist doing what someone asked you to do. So this is an example of a horse resisting to go with its owner. And then opponents. Those are people who oppose something. So in this basketball situation here, the Hawks and the Indiana team are opponents. They are not on the same team. They're on opposite teams. Turn the page and let's get ready to read. Because we have a nonfiction text, our strategy that we use to find the main idea is to turn the title into a how or a why question. And so we don't want to say, why did the abolitionists want to end slavery? Because we already know why. They thought slavery was wrong. Instead, we could say, how did the abolitionists try to end slavery? And we would write that down in box 1. Get ready to write, how did the abolitionists end slavery? Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to read. And we are going to start at the top of the page and read the whole paragraph. As we're reading, we want to underline our answer to the question, which is going to help us form our main idea. I'm at the top of the paragraph. White opponents of slavery, called abolitionists, organized their resistance in the 1820s and 1830s. And so I underlined the definition of abolitionists because I know they were white opponents of slavery. Not all abolitionists were white. Obviously, there were several African Americans who wanted slavery to end. But the ones we're talking about today are the white abolitionists. Early leaders were clergymen and Quakers, members of the religious group who opposed violence. In 1826, Levi Coffin, a Quaker from North Carolina, set up an operation in Ohio known as the Underground Railroad. This was a system of secret trails that ran from the northernmost slave states through New England to Canada. Escaped slaves linked up with guides called conductors who led the escapees along the trails. At its best, the railroad freed only about 1,000 slaves a year, but its very existence and the silent cooperation of thousands of Northerners angered slave owners greatly. All right, so we need to be thinking about, how did the abolitionists end slavery? And we know that the abolitionists helped end slavery in the United States with their efforts on the Underground Railroad. And so we would write that down for our main idea. Abolitionists helped end slavery in the United States with the efforts of the Underground Railroad. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for box 2. It says, an abolitionist fanatic So I know I need to go to this picture and caption titled An Abolitionist Fanatic. And the first thing it's asking me to do is describe John Brown. So I'm going to read this paragraph and underline evidence about John Brown. John Brown was a farmer and abolitionist from Ohio. In October 1859, with the help of armed associates, he attacked the town and government arms factory at Harper's Ferry. Brown hoped to arm slaves with guns from the arsenal and start a rebellion. He believed God wanted him to end slavery with bloodshed. So he believed that God wanted him to kill people so that slaves would be free. After his arrest, his attorneys wanted him to plead insanity. Brown refused. All right, so if I'm thinking about how to describe John Brown, I've underlined he was a farmer and an abolitionist, and he hoped to arm slaves to start a rebellion. So in the first part of box 2, I'm going to write, John Brown was a farmer and abolitionist who wanted to give slaves weapons in order to start a rebellion. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the second part. What character qualities did Brown have as an abolitionist? And I could look in my homeschool journal on the character traits page to help me out. But I'm thinking if John Brown wanted to lead a rebellion, he's probably brave to start a fight with the government. And he was definitely determined in his efforts to end slavery. So I would write John Brown was brave and determined. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for box 3. It's titled A Life Devoted to the Cause of Freedom. And so I'm going to look for that title for the pictures, and it's at the bottom of page 13. And so I'm going to read this caption. Alright, and it asks me to describe Sojourner Truth. So as I'm reading the caption, I'm going to underline evidence about Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth was born a slave in New York State around 1797. In 1827, she escaped and took refuge with an abolitionist family named Van Wagner. In 1843, after claiming to have heard divine voices, she changed her name and began lecturing on abolitionism. She dictated her life story to writer Olive Gilbert, and her book, Narrative of Sojourner Truth, became a bestseller. The money she earned from her book helped fund the work of the Underground Railroad. Alright, and so I have underlined a few important things about Sojourner Truth, and in the first part of box 3, I would write, Sojourner Truth was born a slave, but escaped and became a lecturer. Her story was scripted into a book that became very popular. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you are ready for the second part of box 3. It says, what character qualities did Truth have as an abolitionist? And if I'm looking at my homeschool journal on the character traits page, I would say that Sojourner Truth was determined as well. She was determined to end slavery, and because she was a lecturer and she helped write a book about her life, I would also say that she's well-spoken. So I would write in box 3, Sojourner Truth was determined and well-spoken. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you are ready for box 4. And we are going to read the caption underneath the picture of Frederick Douglass. And as we're reading, we want to describe Frederick Douglass. So we are underlining important information about him. The best-known anti-slavery spokesperson of the pre-war years was Frederick Douglass, the son of a plantation slave woman and her white master. As a young man, he obtained forged papers and traveled north by railroad to freedom. After receiving an education, he became a forceful speaker on the abolitionist circuit and wrote a best-selling autobiography that described the heartbreak of slavery. And so if I'm thinking about who Frederick Douglass was, I would write in the first part of box 4, Frederick Douglass escaped from slavery and became a famous speaker for the abolitionist movement. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the second part of box 4. What character qualities did Douglass have as an abolitionist? And if I'm looking in my character traits list for my homeschool journal, I would also say that Frederick Douglass was determined to end slavery. He was also hardworking and a good speaker. And I would write in the second part of box 4, Douglass was determined, hardworking, and a good speaker. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. How did the abolitionists affect slavery in the United States? How does the author use text features to communicate his message? And so if you go back, you could start with your main idea that tells us about abolitionists, and then you could choose one or two of the abolitionists we read about today to further describe how the author uses text features to communicate this message about abolitionists. I might choose Sojourner Truth just because her picture is so large, and we know that the author uses large, colorful pictures to communicate importance.